Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to our /entitled people, where people truly think they can do what they want, when they want, because the universe revolves around them. And in today's episode, we've got Karens letting their kids harass people, calling 911 on parents, thinking they own public land. It's absolutely wild. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So, a little bit of background information. I work in an unfinished furniture store. Unfinished furniture is real wood, usually fully assembled, but not painted or stained. You buy it raw and either paint it yourself or pay us to paint it for you. It's a really good bargain, assuming you paint it yourself. We charge ridiculous fees for painting. The furniture is assembled in the showroom, including kid stuff like bunk beds. The other thing you need to know is that I use a wheelchair, but I can stand up, and my upper body is strong enough to move large pieces of furniture. Anyways, on truck day, all employees except one are needed in the stockroom to unload the delivery trucks. Invariably, that one employee left in the store is me. In walks Karen and her entitled kid. There's a really nice set of bunk beds near the front door, and the kid's immediately climbing all over them. Of course, Karen ignores this. I know better than to object, as Karen has that haircut. And my manager is spineless. He always sides with the customers. So I go and greet Karen and begin the usual customer service pattern. We've moved over to the section of tables when her kid joins us. Now, I'm not good at judging ages, so I'll just say he was about 5 years old. The kid's staring at my wheelchair, but he's saying nothing. It does seem odd to me, but maybe he's sheltered and he's never seen one before. I continue to give Karen customer service. That's when I lean over to pick up one of the small tables to show Karen the underside. And when I put the table back down, the kid is right next to me. I know that kids don't get the concept of personal space, but this was ridiculous. Now, if you've ever looked closely at a wheelchair, there's lots of places in the structure where a small child could place a hand or foot, risking getting caught, pinched, or even breaking bones. I've broken a few of my fingers this way while getting the hang of my wheelchair, so I'm cognizant of the danger. Plus, the kid's close enough that I can't see his feet, meaning I can't move without risking running over his feet. As I'm about to ask him to move to roll away, the kid uses my wheelchair like monkey bars and he begins to climb me. His mom sees this, but does she stop him? No. Her exact words were, "Play with her gently, Joseph. Don't hurt her." And maybe this is a regional thing, but in the South, we have an odd way of phrasing things. When you tell a child to play nicely, it's because the child is playing with another child, or adult. In other words, a person. When you tell a child to play gently, it's because the child's playing with an animal or a potentially fragile object, not person. Not only has Karen not removed her child from my required expensive piece of medical equipment, she's referred to me as an animal, or object. I'm not sure what's worse. Also, the kid's wedged his feet into the supports of one of my wheels, in such a way that if I move the chair at all, I'll break at least one of his feet. I'm effectively trapped. Meanwhile, Karen browses her way onto the next aisle. The kid's now bouncing on a part of my wheelchair that's not intended to be load-bearing. At this point, Karen and her kid and I were the only people in the store. I knew where all the cameras were, and we happened to be in a blind spot, so I did something rather unpleasant. I would say I'm ashamed of myself, but that would be a lie. I grabbed the kid by his ear and dragged his head down to whispering level. I then told him, in my very best, I'm dangerously insane voice, "If you don't get off me and behave yourself, I will hurt your mother. And you don't want to see that, do you?" I then stared at him right in the eyes for a second, before releasing his ear and shoving him off me. The kid squeaked, and then ran away from me all the way back to the front door, where he scaled the bunk beds and just huddled there, with a mix of fear and a smug, "you can't get me up here" look on his face. As we were now on camera, I just gave him my sweetest smile and then went back to Karen. As Karen was ready to leave, the kid was still on the upper bunk, and I took the opportunity to twist the knife a little. We weren't required to escort customers to the door, but I did so. And when I got next to the bunk beds, I stood right up, right next to where the entitled kid was still huddled. and I loudly wished Karen a great rest of the day. At that, the kid nearly flew off the other side of the bunk beds. I had just proved that I could get him there. He was not safe. Karen and her son never came back, so I can only assume that her kid never told her what happened. Was that extreme? Maybe. Do I care? No. And I never thought I would say this in a million years, but do not climb other people's wheelchairs. What a ride that was, guys. And I've read a lot of stories where parents allow their kids to do absolutely ridiculous things. But holy moly, letting your kid climb all over somebody sitting in a wheelchair has gotta be one of the most absurd things a parent will let their children do. Like, have some respect for others, lady. Like, it's one thing when a kid's climbing all over you like you're not even there, but it's another when the parent basically encourages it. With that said though, the way Opie handled that by whispering those words in that child's ear was freaking evil. I would be terrified if I was 5 years old and a complete stranger said that to me. Guys, let me know your thoughts on how Opie handled that. Okay, I somehow never thought I'd have to post here, and yet here I am. I'm homesick with kid crud, but we promised our 6-year-old daughter a trip to the local park this weekend. We decided that I would stay home and take some cold medication and rest, while my husband took our daughter to the park. Well, 30 minutes into her playing and having a blast, a rabid Karen approaches my husband, who was just sitting at a picnic table supervising, demanding to know where his child was, and why he's been filming and photographing random children. I want to note, he only photographed our daughter. The other kids in the background were blurred. It was portrait mode. So he showed Karen a few of his pictures. My husband is very mild-mannered and non-confrontational, and he points to our child and said, "That's my daughter, Jessica." Upon hearing her name, my daughter runs up to him and hugs him, called him Papa, and then asked to be pushed on the swings. And this is when Karen gives my husband the evil eye. She stalked off and then yelled the word pedo while pointing at him many times, and then whispered something in another person's ear, still pointing at him. She then gathered what he assumed were her grandkids and then left. Well, 10 minutes later, the cops show up, and they separate my husband and daughter. They interrogate them both and made my husband show his pictures, which were all of our daughter. They then ran a check on him, the whole 9, without even letting my daughter simply confirm, "That's my papa." She was crying and reaching out for him many times, obviously frightened to be separated. He was of course cleared, but he was literally just a dad at the park with his kid. But the damage was done. When she got home, she said she thought she and Papa were going to jail. And here's a bonus annoyance. Our tags are expired by like a week. My husband was gonna get them fixed on Friday, so of course the cops caught it. And now we have an extra fine to pay that we don't have the money for. So thanks, Karen. My daughter now says that she's afraid of the park and she never wants to go back because she doesn't want her papa to go to jail. We also now have a fine we were unprepared for because we didn't think that a 1-mile drive to the park to fulfill a promise to our 6-year-old would result in a huge fine despite barely being late on renewing our tags. Oh, and our daughter also keeps asking what a pedo is, and why is Papa a pedo? So any help on how to respond to that would be greatly appreciated. And since when did a father taking somebody who's obviously his daughter become a reason to call the cops? Especially after she ran right up to him, hugged him, and called him Papa. Are they that unfamiliar with the idea that dads want to be involved in their kids' lives or give their partners a break? What about single, divorced, or kids that have 2 dads? I almost feel bad for these lead-brained idiots that have never experienced a supportive partner being a good father and husband. I'm still shocked this even happened. I'm absolutely livid. Thanks for reading this brick wall of text if you did. I needed to vent more than anything. Honestly, Karens need to mind their own damn business sometimes. Like, it's one thing to be wary of strangers at the park, and honestly, I'm thankful for people like Karen who do speak up when they see something. But when a girl runs up to someone, shows no sign of fear or being in danger, and calls them Papa for goodness sake, maybe she's his daughter, Karen. My guess is she didn't like the fact that she was wrong, and she just doubled down out of spite. But what a traumatizing situation to be in though, and it sucks that Opie's daughter is now terrified of going to the playground. And this person comments, consider filing a complaint and CCing everyone of significance: the mayor, city council, police captain, your attorney, the town hall PR director, local media, everyone. Like, if this is what following proper procedure looks like, there's something terribly wrong with the procedures. And guys, this person shares their similar experience. And they say, okay, as the summer winds down, I figured that I would take the kids to the park a few times before school started up again. My wife and I took the kids, and while the kids were playing, I got a call from work, so I stepped away to take the call. There was a 4-foot fence that goes around the play area, so I walked over to it, leaned on it while I talked with my boss. He wanted me to work on my day off. I end up not taking him up on it as he wanted me to work that day and take a different day off that week. That's a no-go, so I called my shop steward and asked what he thought. So while on the phone with my steward, 2 police officers approached me and they tried to get my attention. I told them that I'm on the phone and continued my conversation. They got very annoyed, but I didn't care. When I was done, I asked them what they wanted, and they said they received a complaint about a creepy man in the park, staring at the kids, taking pictures of them, and talking on the phone to somebody. That's when I said, and I quote, "So, you're calling me a creep now? My family is right over there. You can follow me to them if you want." I then went back to my family, and as I was walking back to them, I can see an older woman, like in her 50s, approaching the officers. I'm assuming she was the one who called them. They talked to her for a minute before walking off. The day this happened, I'm at a city park with my kids, and we've been to this park a bunch. There's this one spot where there's a rocky hill, all tree covered. It's nice and shady on a hot day. There's also a playground and a pavilion at the top of the hill. We get up there, and immediately I notice loud noises, and I'm having to step over cables and extension cords. I noticed that somebody rented the pavilion and set up not 1, but 3 bounce houses around it. And I'm thinking to myself, effing great. So I have to give the disappointing news to my kids that even though they're surrounded by bounce houses, they can't play in them, since it's a private party, but they're free to go hit the playground. Everyone's cool. I sit on a bench as my kids go to town on the fake pirate ship, when out of nowhere I hear, "Hey, you." And this is when an entitled dude, doing his best to intimidate me, walks up to me, and he informs me that the playground is closed for a private party. At that, I look at him, and I inform him that the public park does not close for private parties. And it sounds like he rented the pavilion nearby, which is fine, but that doesn't give him exclusive use of the neighboring playground. At that, the guy storms off, and he returns with a rental agreement, and he shoves it in my face, telling me to get my effing kids and to leave right now. I take a look at it, and it's a rental agreement, and it's very clearly for the pavilion, all for the grand sum of $35 for 4 hours. Like, how could any sensible adult think that $35 grants you exclusive use of a public playground? Also, why is it so important for you to have exclusive use of a public playground? So I again point out to him that he rented the pavilion, not the park, and my kids and I will not leave. I told him they won't go on his bounce houses and we won't go into his pavilion, but the playground is fair game for everyone. At that, the guy begins hurling threats, and at this point, I'm just weighing taking my kids and leaving to avoid this a-hole. And then I decide I need to take a stand on principle. So I tell him to F off and proceed to use my phone to find the phone number for the park office. Our county staffs our parks, and during the summer months, they employ park rangers who have peace officer authority. So I call the park ranger and I tell him that there's trouble at this shady playground, and they need to come right away. Sure enough, as I'm getting off the phone, the idiot returns with his 2 meathead friends to tell me that they're ejecting me from the park. So I tell him, no you're not, and if you touch me, I will call the cops and press charges. I said that without any anger or rage. And with this promise of action, however, one of them kind of widens his eyes and he steps back, saying to his friend, "Just leave them alone, man." This guy, for some reason, does not want the police coming, and it's very obvious. The ringleader won't back down, however, and he tries his best to get in my face, to scream and yell. He then grabs my arm and tries to twist it, but I remove his hand. All of this happens just as I see the ranger pull up. The guy yells for everyone to step back from one another and to come over. And this smug idiot shoves the rental contract into the chest of the ranger, telling him that I'm trespassing and that he rented this space for 1 day for his kid's party. Now, normally, I don't like posturing by law enforcement, but here it was pretty amusing. The ranger says, "Touch me again and I'm arresting you." He then reads the contract and he tells Idiot, "This is for renting the pavilion. You have use of the pavilion, but the playground is open for public use." He then hands it back and says, "Also, your permit does not allow you to set up bounce houses. Where did you plug these in?" The ranger then follows the extension cords and sees that they ran to the nearby public bathrooms. There was an outdoor outlet and it was locked. The dude cut the lock off so he could plug in all of this crap. So the ranger comes back with a broken lock and he asked Idiot, "Did you cut this lock?" The guy tells the ranger, it was like that when I found it." The ranger says, "Really? Because it was intact this morning. So some random person cut this lock and you just happened upon it within the last 2 hours?" The guy responds, "Yes, I guess." So long story short, he let them stay and let them keep the bounce castles going because he didn't want to ruin a kid's party. He wrote the guy a citation for the broken lock and the unauthorized power use and then banned him from the park for the remainder of the season after the party. Amazingly, this entire event was lost on my children, who barely noticed anything was going on, likely because of the compressor noise. Oh boy, that was next level entitled to think that he and his family had full use of a public playground. And you really have to wonder if OP was the first he's done that to that day. Like, did the guy spend all day going up to random strangers and getting his 2 cronies to eject people from the park? That said, Ranger seems like a good dude, because you know for a fact that there's rangers out there that would have shut the whole party down. Especially after finding out that that idiot ran power to the public bathrooms and cut the lock off. Again, next level entitled, guys, and if you think that was entitled, listen to this next post. Something happened in my neighborhood recently that I think deserves its own story. So just down the road from my house is a decent-sized playground with a 2 to 3 foot fence over it, meaning smaller kids have to use the gate, where older and bigger ones are able to climb over as long as they get a leg up. Anyways, the park is very popular with the kids in the area, and it's always really crowded and busy. But that makes it more fun, as that means they can make more friends. Recently, however, I've been hearing about a particular family who have been rather rude and tend to push away other people when they use the park. There is an entitled mom, an entitled dad, and 2 entitled kids, and I had not met any of them until the day in question. So Thursdays are the days I get to see my niece and nephew, and I cherish them. I don't have kids of my own, but if they turned out like my niece and nephew, I'd be an extremely happy dad. Anyway, today, they both decide that they want to go to the playground and play on the swings, and I could always use fresh air, so I took them down. Straight away, I noticed the playground was very empty, and there was only 2 kids in there, so I went over, and I let my niece and nephew run to the park while I walked there myself. I saw they were having some issues getting the gate open. The gate has a sliding lock, so it doesn't swing open in the wind. But I knew they were both capable of opening it, so I was curious if they were just messing around. As I got closer, though, I saw that someone had put a padlock on the gate to stop it from being opened. And straight away, I assumed it was one of the 2 kids in the park, who just so happened to be entitled Kid 1 and number 2. Of course, I asked the kids to come and open the gate so we could come in, but they told me they don't have the key on them and we need to go away. I just scoffed and lifted my niece and nephew over the fence and into the park, and they both ran off to the swings. I stayed outside because there was no way I was climbing the fence in skinny jeans. I couldn't even bend down properly. Well, after 20 minutes of watching the kids play, I get a text from my sister saying dinner's ready, and we need to go back and eat. So I call my niece and nephew to come to the fence so I could lift them over to go home, and I could not do it. They were both too heavy to get a proper grip and lift on. So I asked kid number 1 and 2 if they knew who put the lock on the gate, and once again, they were no help. So I explained that if they don't tell me who locked the gate, then they would probably be stuck here. They just laughed and then proceeded to climb the fence as a pair and then ran to one of the houses up the road. I wanted to follow them to potentially ask their parents, but I couldn't leave my niece and nephew alone. So I called my sister, and this is how I explained it. I call her and say, "Hey sis, I need your help." She says, "You didn't lose the kids, did you?" I tell her, no, come to the playground, I'll explain when you get here. My sister says, "Just let me know, I'm not coming all the way over there for nothing. What's going on?" This is when I tell her, the kids are stuck in the park. I need your help getting them over the fence. I can't climb in and I can't lift them out. My sister says, "Use the gate." I tell her, "Somebody locked it. There was a big padlock on it." This is when she says, she'll be there in a few minutes. Hold on. Once I'd hung up, I looked back towards the house that Kid 1 and Kid 2 ran to, and I saw them coming back, with parents this time. I assumed they were coming to help, but boy was I wrong. All 4 of them walked up to me, and I immediately got an earful before I could speak. The woman screams at me and says, "My kids were using this park. How dare you come over and disturb them? And then you threaten to lock my kids here all night? You're lucky we haven't called the police." I tell her, "I'm sorry, but this is a public playground. I just asked if your sons knew who locked the gate." The dad says, "I did. What's it to you?" I then ask, "Well, can you unlock it? I'm almost certain you're not allowed to do this." The dad proceeds to unlock the gate and let my niece and nephew out, only for him to go right back to locking it. And this is when the mom says, "We lock it so our kids can enjoy it without any other kids coming over and disturbing them. Now we would appreciate it if you stayed off the playground from now on." Now I knew this wasn't worth my time and there wasn't a lot I could do. So I just took my niece and nephew home and that was that. We didn't go back, but I'm going back tomorrow and see if this is still locked or not. I'll post an edit when I know. Update number 1. So I woke up 30 minutes early today to give me some time to go check the gate before I leave to work, and it was still locked. So I called a non-emergency number and I told the cops and gave them both my details and what I knew about the family and left it with them. I shall post another update after work. Update number 2. Oh boy, have I got some news. So on my way home from work, I stopped by the gate once again, and the padlock was actually gone. I'll get to what happened in a jiffy, but anyways, I was skipping my way down the road, knowing I had done the neighborhood a service, only to hear a voice of an entitled parent from their front door. It was the dad, and the guy was ready to give me an earful. He screams at me and says, "Hey, are you the a-hole that called the cops on us? We had to take off our effing lock because of you." I respond, "I'm not apologizing. You were trying to privatize a public place, so I called the police, and I would happily do it again." He then says, "You can't do crap without the police. You are pathetic. Do not wind me up because I can make you suffer." This is when I tell him, "You want me to call the police right now for threatening me?" I then pull out my phone, and the guy proceeds to close the door and give me the middle finger through the window. I just stroll back home, and I only looked over my shoulder twice. Again, some people think it's all about them, right? Like locking a gate to a public playground so only your kids can enjoy it has gotta be one of the most entitled things a parent can do. And I only wish they were somehow banned for that stupid move, or at the very minimum, fined somehow. Because people like that should have to pay for their stupid actions, or else they'll never learn. And guys, if I were in Opie's shoes, I would be bringing out the bolt cutters and just keep cutting lock after lock until those idiots give up. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/EntitledPeople. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where bad Karen bosses are getting absolutely destroyed by employees. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.